Okay, my name's Craig Morrison. I'm the executive producer and game director on Age of Conan. This is Joel Bylos, who is the lead designer on the expansion pack. And what we'll do today, first we will show you the trailer that we released on Tuesday to give you an impression of what the expansion is about. And then we'll be going through a presentation that's about 15 minutes long. Joel and I will talk about the expansion a little, some of the features, and what it is that we're trying to achieve with the expansion. So, with the expansion pack, we're taking the players east to the land of Kitai. And Kitai, much like the other regions of the world as imagined by Robert E. Howard in his original literature, is a retelling of our own ancient history. Kitai is the Orient, it's East Asia. And where better to start an adventure in the East than under the shadow of the Great Wall itself. What we wanted to give the players was really a sense of exploration. The kingdoms in Kitai are very unfamiliar to people from Conan's lands. It's a strange and foreign new land that they're not really used to, and we really wanted to give the player that sense that they're on a voyage of discovery. And that's because we wanted to take a slightly different approach with how we built the world and constructed the continent of Kitai in the expansion. You'll find that the playfields are much more open and there's much more explorable game space in each of the regions. And we've extended that into the way that we've constructed the continent as well. In the original game, you visited travel NPCs who might have taken you by boat or by carriage and you'd have moved hundreds of kilometers. In Kitai, while we're still using our zoning technology, all of the playfield regions are kind of stitched together. So a player, when they move from one zone to the other, they're able to look behind them and see where they've come from and look ahead and see where they're going. So for example, when the players actually later on gets to travel on top of the wall here, they can actually see two playfields from that vantage point, one behind them and one ahead of them. Howard only mentioned Kitai 3 or 4 times through the course of his stories. We wanted to go back to Howard's original writing. King Conan is a very important character for our game. The players have played through the original content and come to know Conan and work for him. And so we really wanted to ground the reason why the players are in Kitai in one of Howard's original stories.
So in the story The Tower of the Elephant, which is one of the original Howard stories, Conan is a thief, he's 17 years old, he's living in Zamora. And he decides to climb the Tower of the Elephant and try and loot some gems from the sorcerer who lives there. Unfortunately, when he climbs the tower, he discovers something much more. He discovers an ancient being called Yag Kosha. And Yag Kosha has actually been held prisoner by the sorcerer who lives there for over 300 years. And he's been tortured. And he tells Conan, when I came to Earth before mankind existed, and I lived in the jungles of the East. And when the Khitan people lived there, they worshipped him as a god. And Conan, out of mercy, kills Yag Kosha. And of course this has had ramifications, because when Conan killed the god who was protecting Kitai, the protection disappeared. And so for the last 25 years, the Empire of Kitai has slowly been spiraling into corruption, into darkness. Obviously the people of Kitai don't like Conan very much because of that. And so, as you can see here, they built this nice little straw man, and they're going to set it alight. This is an important part of the storytelling that we're doing in the expansion. On top of that, we also wanted to make sure that this story highlighted choice and consequence. In the past, Conan made a choice. He chose to kill Yag Kosha out of mercy, and that's having a consequence 25 years later on his reign as King of Aquilonia. And this is a very important point for players as well. What they choose to do will have a consequence in the game.
Conflict and consequence. This notion that your actions can have far-reaching implications and a consequence on your path through life. And indeed, in our players' case, it'll be their decisions have a telling consequence on how their story through Kitai is told. The choices in Howard's world are never black and white. They're not good and evil. We wanted to make that kind of moral ambiguity that went throughout all of Howard's writing really come out in the storytelling. So when you're making decisions for these factions, it'll be complex stories with different motivations, and players might even find that the story arcs don't quite end up as they expected, as their decisions have different consequences down the line. So if you're doing quests, beheading the guys in the red uniform all day, you're going to be careful about walking up to a city protected by the guys in the red uniforms. They're not going to welcome you with open arms. They're going to know. So with that in mind, we wanted to make sure that all of the factions had a very clear visual identification. Here you see this is the kind of armor they'll get when they first join a faction. It's very plain, quite ordinary. It's what they give the newbies. So when you first join an expansion, as you go through, you earn faction points, complete quests, you'll be able to purchase new, more powerful armor sets, more elaborate, working your way up to show your status within that faction. Again, all within this very deliberate visual look. What you see here, going back to visual identification, you can see here the kind of iconography and colors and the banners are reflected in the uniforms. This is the Scholars of Jasan, whose soldiers you saw on the battlefield earlier. So the player, even from a distance, can get a very clear idea of which faction is responsible for that town. Very early on, we made a conscious decision that we weren't going to look to a Japanese influence for the design. It's been used a lot in games, and we wanted to do something quite a bit different. So, the players running through these areas, they're not going to mistake this for somewhere in Northern Europe or Egypt. The artists have definitely managed to capture, and even in some subtle ways as well. If you notice, all these buildings are open plan, and the player's able to move freely through it. There's no billboard buildings with closed doors for decoration in the towns in Kitai. All of the cities are open and the player can wander through and explore the buildings. Okay, this wonderful creature is one of the new mounts that'll be available in the game, but you'll have to go through something a little bit more barbaric to get your hands on it, as Joel's going to explain right now.
Yep, so we're adding 2 new mounts in the expansion, a wolf and a tiger mount. But first I want to talk about our design philosophy with mounts, because most MMOs, when you get a new mount, it means that you get a faster speed increase, and that's generally it, and it always makes your old mounts kind of worthless. So what we're doing here is actually we've decided to try and keep the value in our fast mounts and make all of the other mounts have something unique about them. In the case of the tiger, that means that it can stealth. You can hide while using the tiger. And on top of that, we also really wanted to make sure that you didn't just buy a tiger from a vendor for 5 gold. So the way that you actually have to earn this tiger is by you join the cult which worships tigers. Once you've achieved the top of that cult, you can go out and perform a ritual. The ritual involves taking off your armor, unequipping your weapons, going out into the woods and beating the crap out of a tiger with your bare hands. Then you can take a cub, and the cub you need to raise as your own tiger.
When it came to the character development in the expansion, we very much wanted to be able to bring the Eastern theme into new spells, attacks, combos, and abilities. So what we've got is a new alternate advancement system. So when players are out taking part in their normal gameplay, they'll be earning new alternate advancement points. And they can spend these points on brand new feat trees that will exist on top of the ones that they already have. And so we're introducing the concept of training. And what the training means is that the new abilities that they've earned through the alternate advancement system, the player will be able to focus their training on. And that means that over time, those skills and abilities will effectively level up to get more powerful versions of those attacks, kind of like you'd see in a game like EVE Online. And that progression will happen whether you're on or offline. Okay, so that about wraps it up for the presentation itself. So it's over to you guys for any questions you want to ask.